morning, everyone. My name is Priscilla. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm so glad to be bringing you the message this morning. Our first reading is a poem from Sanctified Art, Reverend Sarah Speed. And Praise the Mount is the name of it. I was like, do I know the name of it? It's Praise the Mount. I have stayed quiet before. I have held my tongue while passing mountains. I have slipped my hands deep into pockets despite the music that invites me to dance. I have glimpsed a new moon and a new love and have acted as if it was something other than a complete God-given miracle. But not today. Not today. Today I will dance. Today I will tap my toes all the way to heaven's gates. Today I will point out every shade of gold and periwinkle that we pass. Today I will talk about my faith like we talk about the weather. Early and unprompted, comfortable and unashamed. Today I will tell you that God did such a good job with freckles, willow trees, and your entire being. And I will not be embarrassed by my own conviction. I will not swallow my praise. I have stayed quiet before, but not today. Today I will sing. Our second reading comes from the Gospel of Matthew, reading chapter 16, verses 13 to 20 from the Inclusive Bible. When Jesus came to the neighborhood of Caesarea Philippi, he asked the disciples this question: "What do people say about who the chosen one is?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptizer, others say Elijah, still others Jeremiah or one of the other prophets." "And you," he said, "who do you say that I am?" "You are the Messiah," Simon Peter answered, "the firstborn of the living God." Jesus replied, "Blessed are you, Simon Ben-Jonah. No mere mortal has revealed this to you, but my Abba God in heaven. I also tell you this, your name now is Rock, and on bedrock like this I will build my community, and the jaws of death will not prevail against it. Here I'll give you the keys to the reign of heaven. Whatever you declare bound on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you declare loosed on earth will be loosed in heaven." Then Jesus strictly ordered the disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah. Each time I prepare a sermon, especially these days, I have to determine to what degree my message will reflect me as a preacher with a Bible in one hand and a newspaper in the other. It's the responsibility of a preacher to be a public theologian that speaks to and takes stances on current events in our region and world, especially the most devastating ones. But also some days, we need this place to be the sanctuary that it is, a place of respite, a community of people with religious inclinations who acknowledge the limits of rationality. We can't think and plan our way out of being obliterated by the things happening to us and around us. I recently heard someone on a podcast bragging about their church, and they said, "I don't want to go into a church to draw closer to the rational things of life." As for today, I thought I'd have some mercy and leave the newspaper at home. Instead, let's turn to the feel-good side of social media. Are you one of the 2.3 million people who follow the Instagram account MeetCutesNYC? I see some nods. Some of you know what I'm talking about. In short video clips, there's an interviewer who you can't see because he's off screen. He approaches people walking the streets of New York and asks, "Excuse me, are you guys a couple?" Often people respond by saying, "Oh, you're that guy," or, "Oh, I've seen your videos online." If they are a couple, he proceeds to ask them 3 more simple questions. First, how did you meet? This question often elicits eye contact between the two people as they exchange a knowing laugh of merriment. Almost every time you see the people look at each other and just laugh. Once they've shared how they met, he asks, "How long have you been together?" And then finally, we get the most interesting question of all. What's your favorite thing about them? I can't get enough of these videos, especially the older couples. I love the juxtaposition of people sharing their first impressions of each other, which is usually that they annoyed me a lot and I didn't like them, and then their current impressions after having a front row seat to how they show up in the world. With years of experience under their belts, they get to summarize what they have come to know and appreciate most about their partner. People's responses are heartwarming and funny. It's like they've been walking around just waiting for somebody to ask them to share their love story. Let me share how I think these mini interviews relate to this conversation that we read between Peter and Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew. We hear Jesus asking the disciples, "What do people say about who I am?" Rumor had it that Jesus was actually someone else, like maybe John the Baptist, Elijah, Jeremiah, or some other prophet. Those guesses were because some of the miracles Jesus performed looked familiar and resembled some of those performed by other people. And then Jesus turns to Simon Peter and asks, "But who do you say that I am?" It's just like when those couples are asked, "What is your favorite thing about this person?" This question is a stand-in for, who are they really? After all this time, what have you come to realize about them? What makes them special enough to be your chosen person? If you've been a Christian for a long time and you express that your conception of and relationship to God has remained unchanged, I'd have some questions and concerns. Over time, all relationships change and hopefully deepen. When I first came to faith in an evangelical Baptist tradition as a teenager, the God that was presented to me was a harsh athletic coach with a playbook that was supposed to be strictly adhered to. My job was to be in the world, but not of the world, whatever that means. I'm getting some knowing looks like maybe some other people receive these messages. This included avoiding worldly music. I distinctly remember pulling out the tape, it's such a sad image, from a Smokey Robinson cassette, and the act hurting my heart, but also making me feel obedient, I guess? But who was the 12-year-old girl actually being obedient to? Now I can see that my inclination to renounce all non-religious music was a commandment not of God, but of people at my local church who were authorized to teach what I now know to be false doctrine. They were well-intentioned, but probably riddled with a lot of self-help, hate, shame, and blame. If my concept of God had not changed, there is no way that we would still be an item. Who wants to hang out with a harsh coach who barks orders and doesn't like jamming to Smokey Robinson? Today, what it means for me to evangelize doesn't involve emotionally manipulating someone into adopting my concept of God. It means sharing all the wonderful ways that my understanding of God has evolved over time as an invitation for them to explore their own spirituality. This is what it now means not to swallow my praise. How did you meet the Holy One? What were your first impressions? How long have you been doing life together? After all this time, what is your favorite thing about being in relationship with them? For some of us, the love story with God and the church involved a breakup. Maybe you thought you had left church for good. What reunited you with your faith? How did you have to excavate it and put it back together, piece by piece? To be clear, if you ask me what's the best thing about my person on a good day, my answer will be confident and it will exude gratitude for their presence in my life. But if you ask me who he is on a bad day, maybe I'll hem and haw and stammer a bit, trying to find a kind way to tell the hard truth. This is what we experience with the ups and downs of faith. Some days we feel more certain, and some days we are less clear and more confused. Luckily, Jesus asked this question of Simon Peter on a good day. In this story, Peter speaks with conviction. He claims his faith. If you had to speak your faith in one sentence or phrase, what would you say? When we have the courage to say, "This I believe," that conviction has a ripple effect on others. When life gets rocky, we lean on these mountaintop moments, and our deepest convictions see us through. Peter experienced moments of wandering, of uncertainty and questioning. Last week, Kip shared how Peter was walking on the water and became frightened and started to sink. Even with Jesus right there within arm's reach, he couldn't muster enough trust to see it through. With or without our notice, God is continually sowing seeds of revelation so that we can better understand the nature of God. This is what we fall back on our bad days, on our days that are more filled with doubt, when we need to cry out for help. We recall our moments of clarity during our mountaintop faith experience when we felt especially close to God. When I ask about your love story of faith, I'm not asking about the Jesus of history or theology. I want to hear about the Jesus of your experience. What encounters can you lean on when the Spirit says, "Who do you say that I am?" Your conviction, your ability to say, "I believe," does matter. Yet, it's a normal part of our faith to feel unsteady and doubtful at times, to cry out and say, "Lord, save me. I feel like I'm sinking. I'm not feeling it today. Remind me why I chose you, God. Remind me that you have chosen me. Nurture my wandering heart. Send me a witness with steadier feet to throw me a lifeline. Help me recall the mountaintop moments. Remind me of the seeds of revelation that you've planted in my life, of the times when I was more certain." Diana Butler Bass is the author of a book called Freeing Jesus. She opens the book with a story about something that happened to her a decade ago. One of her favorite places to pray was in a small chapel at the Washington National Cathedral. She was kneeling on a cushion at the marble altar with a massive icon of Christ that usually drew her deeper towards God. She doesn't exactly say what she was going through, but her prayer that day was, "Where are you, God?" Seems like a rhetorical question, but on that particular day, she actually got an answer in the form of a voice that said, "Get me out of here." She opened her eyes and looked behind and around her, only to find herself to be the only one in the room. She now believes that on that day, she heard a divine demand for freedom. She didn't know how to react, so she bolted out of there, envisioning how she might rescue Jesus from the cathedral and feeling bad for leaving him behind. In hindsight, this experience makes her reflect on the millions of Americans who have left church. There are those who look down on that decision, claiming that one of the main tenets of faith is that the church is the body of Christ, and ecclesiastically approved theology will not let you separate Jesus from the church. But many would beg to differ. They are more than content to have fled institutional Christianity, deconstructing their faith and disrupting conventional notions of church. Diana Butler Bass thinks that some of these religious refugees seems to have heard the same voice that she did at the altar that day. "Get me out of here," and are trying to free Jesus that he might roam in the world with them. What does it mean for you to set Jesus free? Can you do it without leaving church? What would it mean for us to do it together as a congregation, to reimagine faith and disrupt conventional notions of church? How can we find new life in this faith love story? Who are you, Lord, is the question of a lifetime. That query frees Jesus to show up in our lives over and over again and entails remembering where we first met, how we struggled with each other along the road, and what we learned in the process. I have not known one Jesus. I have met many, and I believe that you probably have too. What symbol might best describe your experience of faith? The cross, of course, is the most familiar symbol of Christianity. As for the author of this book, she answers the question this way: the circle best illustrates my experience of Jesus around tables, altars, and campfires, in classrooms and church rooms, at rallies and protests. There have been times in my life when I liked lines, wanted to draw lines, and tried to consign others to myself to neat rows of pews or desks. I imagined that life was a straight narrative line with clear beginnings, happy endings, and solutions to all the mysteries. It took me time to understand the mystery of Alpha and Omega is more like a spiral, or the mythical snake that eats its own tail, the infinite geometric form symbolizing the all. What is the shape of your faith today after all this time? Is it a heart because in this season for you, God is love? Maybe it's a snake that sheds its skin each season, or an onion with multiple layers. It might be a tree with a complex root system that is interconnected with everything around it. As for me, my faith is currently taking the shape of a lightning bolt, not the scary, loud kind. I'm learning to stop putting God in a box. The divine is spontaneous and energetic, never static, and always mysterious. They show up in powerful ways when I least expect them and make their presence known in ways that sometimes are not so subtle. May you find yourself returning to the start of your faith love story, finding ways to incorporate the wisdom of the entire journey, all the Jesuses you have known, into your life now. Here's to finding a new beginning, one that frees Jesus, and may the circle be unbroken as you answer Jesus' question, who do you say that I am? This is the good news of God. Amen.